to explain to you how they do this without the wires. Okay? Off the top of my head. I want people to realize our governments can literally spy on you through your own eyes, remotely, without these wires on your head. Because they've got a bunch of nanoparticles inside your brain, replacing the need for these wires anymore. And I will explain to you right now how they do it without the damn wires or anything attached to a computer. But I want people to see this first, that this is literally possible. Based on neural activity, more so from the visual cortex, you can reconstruct someone's vision. This is what they see, and this is what the computer reconstructs. Now the problem here is that all these wires and these electrodes have to read the neural activity through this person's skull. So that's why they're getting this faint image. But it manages to pick up shapes almost perfectly. Because that's a remnant of what that guy was just seeing. That's a final remnant of that snowblower or a snow. See what I mean? That's obvious. That's exactly what that is. Even with that tip there. And look at that. That's the reconstructed vision. Because what they're doing is reading the neural activity more so from the visual cortex. And they're getting an AI system to take it from the time domain, which is this person's skull, into a frequency domain, which is all of this. And that signal is being Fourier transformed from a time domain into a frequency domain, where all that noise is being interpreted by AI to reconstruct the image. And what they do is they train that AI so it's familiar with the neural activity, so it can reconstruct what the AI thinks the person is looking at. And that's basically how that works. There you go. You get basic shapes. But again, it's rudimentary imagery construction because of all the noise that the skull and the blood and the brain itself creates between the neurons and the electrodes. But there is another way to do this without the wires. And that is through the use of something close to upconverted nanoparticles and neurons. Okay, if you simply Google this, you can do this research yourself. Because now we can actually tether quantum dots and nanoparticles directly on neurons. You see here how this quantum dot can be secured to this neuron? We can do the same with fluorescent nanodiamonds inside neurons. Now, if you see these red dots, all these red dots inside this vein, it's actually a neuron and dendrites. These are fluorescent nanodiamonds inside living neurons. So now I want you to think about this, okay? Because these nanodiamonds, these fluorescent nanodiamonds, each contain a nitrogen vacancy. And that is what you're seeing giving off the light. Because these fluorescent nanodiamonds can be excited. And then as they go through the relaxation process, they will give off light in equal proportions to the energy that is expended on them to excite them. And because of that, we can look at the energy that comes back, the light that comes back, and basically determine the quantum state of the nitrogen vacancy inside the neuron. Just like we can look at a star and determine what it is composed of, we can look at nanoparticles and nitrogen vacancies and the light that comes back from them to determine their quantum state, their ground state, because they're going to relax back to that state. And based on the photons they give us, we can determine what state they're relaxing back to. Now I'm just showing you that these nanodiamonds basically can replace these quantum dots. And instead of being a quantum dot attached to the neuron, it can be a nanoparticle and a nitrogen vacancy literally inside the neuron. So now what they can do is we can do this wirelessly, because this person, these electrodes, could be replaced if this person had a bunch of nanoparticles and nitrogen vacancies inside his brain. But what we'd have to do is scan this person's brain to look at the quantum states of all those nitrogen vacancies inside his neurons. And what we can also do is entangle nitrogen vacancies together. So we can create entanglement between the nitrogen vacancies that would be inside this person's brain versus the scanner that would be beneath him. And you can see a lot of that through China and entanglement and what they're doing with their satellite systems and the way they can create entanglement between distant nitrogen vacancies. And that's what they're using in all these experiments when they extend entanglement more than 1,000 kilometers. If you look into the details of all these experiments, you're going to find out that every one of them involves the use of nitrogen vacancies as the storage medium, and that they're using photons to entangle distant nitrogen vacancies. So what they're doing is scanning people's brains after poisoning them with nanoparticles that possess nitrogen vacancies. And they're making those nitrogen vacancies part of their global quantum network, because they're scanning through our brains as we lie in bed. And they're making those brains part of their quantum neural network so they can interface with the brain remotely and do all this vision reconstruction in a memristor network. Because if you look at memristor sparse coding, you will see vision reconstruction being done directly in the memristor network itself. And the memristors are being dictated by vacancies. See these vacancies between every crossbar? Those would be nitrogen vacancies in a nitride-based memristor. Those would be nitrogen vacancies in a nitride-based memristor. And it just happens that we can entangle nitrogen vacancies together. So all this vision reconstruction can now be done remotely by putting nanoparticles and nitrogen vacancies into this person's brain, and then scanning that person's brain to make every single one of those nitrogen vacancies that might be in their occipital lobe part of this memristor network, so that they can reconstruct vision remotely. And that's how our governments are spying on the population through their own eyes.